Hi guys, welcome to Bible Breakdown. We are doing 2 Samuel chapter 8 and 9. So the last place we left off, it was the Lord talking to David, David talking back to the Lord, all that stuff, okay? After that, it says that David went into a battle with the Philistines and he defeated the Philistines, and he also took over their mother city. In the process of all that, he defeated the Moabites, and this was a little interesting to read. So verse 2, it says, after making them lie down on the ground, he measured them off with a cord. He measured every 2 cord lengths of those to be put to death and 1 full length of those to be kept alive. So the Moabites became David's subjects and brought tribute. For every 2 lengths, that group of people would die. And then after that, every 1 length would survive. But anyways, we continue. So David, he is basically on a killing spree. He is going after everybody. Next on the list is the king of Zobah. He attacks them, and it says David captured 1,700 horsemen and 20,000 foot soldiers from him, and hamstrung all the horses and kept 100 chariots. So for me, I had to look up what hamstrung meant. That means they cut the hamstrings of the horses. That is brutal. King from Zobah, he brings in reinforcements. There's people that comes to help him. The Arameans of Damascus came. And David, it says David struck down 22,000 Arameans. So everybody that tried to go after David, they wasn't lasting. David took them down. So that king from Zobah, David, he took gold shields from him, and then from his cities, he took quantities of bronze. King Toi of Hamath hears about what David has done with the king from Zobah. He sends his son over, and he tells his son to go congratulate David for what he's done, because King Toba and the king from Zobah, too many words, they used to battle all the time. So King Toba's son, he brings David silver, gold, and bronze. And verse 11 says, King David also dedicated these things to the Lord, along with the silver and gold that he dedicated from all the other nations that he had subdued. So with all this going on, David is still paying his respect to the Lord and giving him what he deserves from all this winning. Then David strikes down 18,000 Edomites, and that gives David a bigger reputation. So in verse 15, it says, so David reigned over all of Israel, administering justice and righteousness for all his people. Then verse 16 to 18 talks about the jobs and the duties that certain people had for Israel. Now on to chapter 9. So chapter 9, it warmed my heart, honestly. So David asked, he's like, is there anybody left from Saul's family that I can bless and give kindness to on behalf of Jonathan? And I was just like, that was really his man. So they tell him that the servant of Saul, his name was Ziba, he was still around. So they called Ziba to David, and David was like, are you Ziba? And he's like, yes. So David, he asked him the same question. He's like, is there anybody left in Saul's family that I can show kindness to on behalf of Jonathan? And Ziba's like, actually, Jonathan's son is still around, but he has injuries in his feet. So David asks where he can find him, and Ziba tells him you'll find him in Lodabar at the house of Machir, son of Amiel. We're going to go with that. So David, he calls for Saul's son, and Saul's son's name, I haven't even mentioned it. His name is Mephibosheth. That's what we're going to go with. I'm going to keep saying Saul's son because it's easier. So Saul's son, he bows down to David. He pays his respect. And David's like, oh my gosh, Mephibosheth. However you say his name at this point. So he's bowing down and he's like, I'm your servant. And David's like, don't be afraid. I will look out for you. In verse 7, he says, since I intended to show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan, I will restore to you all your grandfather Saul's fields, and you will always eat meals at my table. And Saul's son's wondering what he did to deserve all this kindness and David being so nice to him. I just realized I've been saying Saul's son this whole time. I meant Jonathan's son. This is Jonathan's son, Saul's grandchild. Okay, please forgive me. Now David's talking to Ziba, and he's like, give everything that belonged to Saul to his grandson. And then they're like, you guys are going to work day and night for this man. You're going to work his crops so that he has food to eat, but he will only eat at my table. Scripture says in verse 10, you, your sons, and your servants are to work the ground for him, and you are to bring in the crops so your master's grandson will have food to eat. But Jonathan's son, I almost said Saul, I'm not going to say his name, sorry. Your master's grandson is always to eat at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. So that's a lot of people to be working. So Ziba, he agrees to what David says. And he's like, I'm going to fulfill the duties that you want me to do. Now, Jonathan's son, he eats with David as if he was his own son. But Jonathan's son has a son, and his name is Micah. M-I-C-A. I'm not sure how to... Micah. Then it mentions how everybody in Ziba's household was Jonathan's son's servants. And then it also says, however, he lived in Jerusalem because he always ate at the king's table. So he never really went back home because his feet are injured. And that is the end of chapter 8 and 9. Forgive me for my mistakes, guys. I'm human. All right? The stutters, the mistakes, the mispronunciation. I'm trying my best. Nah, but for real, that's all I have for y'all. I love y'all. God loves y'all more. Have a great day.